Nobody likes loose ends, because there must be an answer or a solution to everything. That is why we put our faith in the authorities in science to come up with answers. We believe it is their job to give us these answers. What is hard to accept is when the experts come up blank and have no answers. It's difficult enough when one individual disappears without a trace. However, when multiple people and even entire town populations go missing without a trace, you cannot deny that something more sinister may have taken place. And even after thorough investigations were carried out, experts reached a dead end. The following 6 cases are of mass disappearances, and to this day remain a mystery. Number 6. The Daljo case. The Daljo case is considered to be the only mass disappearance in recorded Swedish history. The incident happened on July the 29th, 1965 in Gothenburg. 4 young men vanished and were never seen again. 3 of the men, Olof Daljo, Gay Carlson and Kjell Ake Johannesson, were a group of friends working together at a shipyard. These 3 men were last seen on a rainy July morning driving a blue Volvo out of town. The 3 men were reported missing by their family members at different times. This may be why police were so slow in connecting their respective disappearances and realising that they had all disappeared together. None of the men held a driver's licence, which means that at least one of them was driving the car illegally. While the young men were occasionally in trouble with the law for petty crimes, and they always seemed to have a lot of money, which may or may not be coincidental, their community generally regarded them as being good guys. A 4th person would disappear from Gothenburg that day, but it's unknown if this case is connected to the other 3. Hubner Lundqvist was travelling to Lysekil via Gothenburg. While in the city, he sent his family a postcard saying, "All is well, don't worry." Gothenburg would be the last known location of Lundqvist, with some theorising that he hitched a ride with the men in the Volvo. Whether he already knew the 3 men or if they met entirely by chance isn't known. The only thing we do know is that none of the 4 men have been seen since 1965, and the case is still unsolved. Number 5. The Village of Hua Verde. It was December 1923 when an entire village in Brazil disappeared. The village, called Hua Verde, was home to some 600 people, all of whom vanished without a trace, leaving behind their possessions and unfinished meals. The discovery was made by a group of visitors who entered the town, apparently following the disappearance. As they moved through the village, it became increasingly evident that there was no one around. There were not even sounds to be heard, just an uncomfortable and eerie silence. There were no birds singing, no insects buzzing. There was no noise at all. The visitors decided that it would be best to talk to the local police about what they had found in order to have the matter investigated. The police were unable to find any sign of the residents, nor any indication as to where they might have gone. When they entered the school, they saw an ominous message written on the blackboard that said, "There is no salvation." There was also a gun nearby that had been fired within the past 24 hours. There are a number of theories about what had happened to the townsfolk, mostly revolving around paranormal or alien activity. More mundane theories looked at the political landscape of Brazil, suggesting that people in the town decided to move away rather than being caught up in guerrilla warfare. While this theory sounds more plausible than others, it doesn't explain why the people left without taking any food or other supplies with them. There are also no records of residents from Hua Verde turning up in different Brazilian communities, which would have happened if all they did was move away. Rather, the evidence points to a total disappearance of the town's population. What caused it to happen, however, remains a complete mystery. Number 4. The Anjikuni Lake Incident. Fur trapper Joe LaBelle was looking for a place to stay the night in November 1930 when he encountered an Inuit settlement near Anjikuni Lake in Nunavut, Canada. While he found a pot over an open fire with scorched food inside, he could find no trace of the 30 members of the community. Even stranger was the fact that every hut still housed the personal possessions of its residents. The food and fish supplies of the village had been left untouched as well. As unlikely as it is that an entire village would just up and leave at the drop of a hat, it's even more unlikely that they would do that without taking any clothes, weapons or food with them. LaBelle reported to the Royal Canadian Mounted Police about what he had found, and they sent out a unit to the settlement. As the unit was on their way to the settlement, they stopped to rest at the home of another local fur trapper, Armand Laurent. Armand told them that there had been a strange gleaming object flying over his property several nights before. The object had headed off in the direction of Anjikuni Lake. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police entered the village and confirmed that it had been completely abandoned, as LaBelle had said. They also made another strange discovery on top of this, finding that the graves to the edge of the settlement had all been broken open and the bodies were missing. Bizarrely, the stone markers for the graves were neatly collected in 2 piles to either side of the graves. The case has remained unsolved despite being investigated twice by Canadian authorities during the 1930s. Number 3. Roanoke Colony. The colony at Roanoke Island is what is now known as North Carolina and was among the first colonies settled by English settlers. The governor of the colony, John White, returned home from a supply trip to Europe with his crew to find that the entire settlement was deserted. The only thing that was left behind was a single skeleton and a tree with the word Croatoan etched into it. A number of theories suggest that the settlers were attacked by the Croatoan tribe living in the south of the Roanoke colony. It's possible that the word was carved into the tree to explain who was behind the disappearance. Other theories suggest that the settlers had returned to Europe following a 3-year absence by White, who had been delayed by war. They had perhaps felt that their leader had abandoned them and tried to return home. This theory suggests that the settlers never made it home, which is why they never showed up in Europe. Their true fate remains a complete mystery. Number 2. Hannibal's Missing Boys. On May the 10th, 1967, 3 boys, Billy Hogue 10, Joey Hogue 13 and Craig Dowell 14, ventured outside armed with flashlights, a ladder and shovels, intending to go on a Tom Sawyer-like adventure in Hannibal, a town in Missouri. The 3 boys were known to routinely explore caves in Hannibal's Southside neighbourhood, and that sunny afternoon they again left home to investigate a nearby cave. However, when the boys failed to return home for supper, their families quickly called police, and a massive search was soon underway. For 10 days the search for the boys drew attention from the local community of Hannibal, and wide media coverage saw the nation awaiting the fate of these 3 young boys. On the day the boys vanished, 14-year-old Lynn Strew reported seeing them heading towards Murphy's Cave at around 4:30 p.m, passing the fire station on their way. Murphy's Cave is known for its maze-like tunnels. On the 3rd day of searching, doubts started to emerge whether the boys were even inside Murphy's Cave. Some theories started circulating as to whether the boys had become trapped in other nearby caves due to the local blasting from the construction of Missouri Highway 79. After days had passed with no sign of them, letters and even psychics started contacting police claiming to have found clues or having had premonitions of the boys. One clairvoyant even claimed to have had recurring visions of the boys locked in a railcar bound for an unknown destination in the US. The search was eventually called off 10 days after it had begun. The boys have never been found, and 50 years later, the case remains a mystery. Number 1. The Springfield Three. On July the 7th, 1992, friends Suzanne Streeter and Stacey McCall and Streeter's mother Cheryl Levitt were at Cheryl's home when they all went missing in Springfield, Missouri. This is one of the most bizarre cases of the multiple disappearances, as all three of the women's personal belongings, including their purses and cars, were left at the home. No signs pointed to a struggle except for one baffling hint: a broken porch light. The only clue that may have pointed the police to the answer was a mysterious message left on Cheryl's answering machine, but which had been inadvertently erased. The two women had been celebrating at their graduation party elsewhere before deciding to spend the night at Cheryl's house. Cheryl was the last of them to be heard from when she spoke to a friend at approximately 11:18 p.m. There have been many theories circulating about what happened to the three women. The first possible lead emerged on December the 31st, 1992, when an unknown man called the America's Most Wanted hotline claiming to have information regarding their disappearance. However, the call was disconnected after the switchboard operator attempted to link up with Springfield investigators. Investigators claim the caller had prime knowledge of the abductions. However, they could not locate him, and the man never contacted them again. The second lead came much later in 1997, when a convicted kidnapper and robber named Robert Gray Cox claimed to know that the women had been murdered, and even stated that their bodies could never be recovered. Another tip-off claimed that their bodies were buried in the foundations of the south parking garage at Cox Hospital. However, investigators determined that the claim was not credible. To this day, the only suspect to the case remains Craig Cox. However, he has stated he'll only disclose what happened to the three women after his mother has died. To this day, the case of the Springfield Three sadly remains unsolved.